Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, John?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
I guess we're gonna go with take two. We're gonna take two on this one. Uh,
Yeah,
we do
take two.
have, yeah, we do have a time restraint, not like the other one. This one is 40 minutes, so it's just a tad bit different. But I think we can get it in.
Well, at least
Oh,
I can see you.
yeah, that part.
You're not first.
Exactly. Okay, let me roll us in here. This is Terry Proveit's podcast. We are under the title of Helpful Hints and Tips About Life. We have Mr. John Traina, who has joined us today and come to bestow some of his great wisdom on us, tell us a little bit about himself and some of the adversities that he's been through to get him to where he's at in life. And he's offering suggestions. We don't offer no advice to the younger generations that are behind us in regards to common sense and how to make it through life with a few less bumps in the road or a few less knots on your head from running into walls that are bound to come in life. So, John, give us a little history of you and then take us on into some of the adversities that you have come through that have brought you to big success like you are. And let me let you know up front, I have the greatest respect for you, and I am very grateful that you take the time, that you have taken the time to come out and give us some of your wisdom. Go for it,
Okay.
John.
Well, since this is take two,
Yes.
yeah, I have 17 minutes of practice.
Yes.
So a little bit about myself. So I was born in Inglewood, California, Daniel Freeman Hospital. Um, I was my parents. My dad was full-blooded Sicilian. My mother was a mutt of sorts, of English, Irish, German. My mother came from Dearborn, Michigan, and my father from Louisiana. A little background on both of those sides. My grandparents on my dad's side migrated here from Sicily. They spent 1 year in New York. They spent 1 year in Oklahoma, where my dad was born, and then moved to New Orleans and lived there the rest of their days. My grandfather, basically, for lack of better words, was a horse proprietor. He raised Arabian stallions of one breed that was there on his farm. And the family kind of bought, my grandfather had 40 acres, my Aunt Leona had 40 acres, my Uncle Vito had 40 acres, all alongside one another. My mother comes from a different background. My grandmother was born and raised in Dearborn, Michigan. The great grandfather actually knew Henry Ford. He'd come by the house, so on and so forth. She was a girl with three older brothers, and basically wanted to get out of the house. She only had an eighth grade education because at that time, being born in 1918, the attitude was, well, what does she need it for? She's just going to be a housewife. So in any event, my dad moved to California. My mother moved to California. They got married. And that didn't end up so well. Growing up, up until, and I'm giving a span of time to kind of give where the lessons learned are. So from age birth to, we're going to say 11 years of age. So my parents divorced in 1970, thankfully. And the reason is that they constantly fought, at least the time that I know. Um, Moving forward, and there will be a part of this, is that my mother was an alcoholic, and their fights were unbelievable. I distinctly remember my mom chasing my dad down a hallway with the butcher knife, and my brother behind me and me kind of protecting him. And I think we talked about it before, but I love the show Adam 12. I thought it was cool to be Kent McCord. I thought it was cool, all the things they did, the dirt bikes, all that stuff. Well, one of the reasons was because of the fact that the police were always at our house. Um, and in a culture at that time, police at your house, oh, what's going on over there? So consequently, they did get divorced. And when they did, my grandmother stepped in because my mom had to get a job. She was just a housewife at the time. And my grandmother, she knew what she knew of raising at that time 3 boys. Um, and while my mother was at work, she got $125 a week, I believe, was her salary as a secretary. Um, and again, different times, but my grandmother would show up, make us breakfast, and get us off to school, and then come back at 3 o'clock when we got out of school, and pick us up and make us do chores and clean up and whatever else, and put dinner on, and my mother come home, and that was the situation. The thing is that also my mom went through at least a bottle, which became two, of Manischewitz wine, which was her drink of choice. So she would go through these, and on weekends it was, it was far worse. And at the age of 6 or 7, I want to say, I was cooking breakfast for my two younger brothers because, of course, my grandmother taught you wouldn't think of putting a skillet in the hands of a 6 or 7 year old maybe today. And I am I did go to chef school, so consequently, I guess it was to be, but and that's not what I do for a living. But you just learn. Pancakes, fry bacon, fry eggs, the whole 9 yards. And at that time, there was uh, I guess for lack of better words, the culture at that time, especially in Westchester, um, was, this just seemed normal. I mean, I guess, for all intents and purposes, it was normalcy. We didn't know any different. You're a child, right? So my mom had to sell the house that we were in, that we kind of grew up in, and we moved to a house that was on the border of Inglewood and Westchester. And I went to a school, an elementary school at the time. I was probably 5th grade, I want to say. That was called 98th Street School. Now, the reason why I say that, there was also a gang in that area called the 98th Street Gang. Now, um, we didn't really, there wasn't a man in the house. We had, at that time, Mr. Powell. Mike and Charlie were across the street. Black family lived across the street. The neighborhood was a mix of all different people and cultures and so on and so forth. Mr. Powell took us to school every day with Mike and Charlie. He was a Garrett Air Research um, uh, engineer, and sitting there with his coffee, drinking his Pinto wagon, with us in it, and kind of, I guess, was probably the first male, I want to say, because my dad wasn't really around. We would go out to New Orleans to visit my grandparents in August, which is always fun. And but he helped us. He taught us how to fight. Boxing. Particularly.
Yeah.
Don't let any person touch you. Type of thing. Well, we really didn't know much of it. My grandmother would always say it. She was a hard cuss, but we really didn't know any of it. And the discipline was on that side was really brutal. By today's standards would never happen. But you kind of, all right, we don't really know any different. So that school, we did nothing but to go to school every day was a fight. Me and my brother David, Danny was a couple years under us, but um, I actually I got with a Hispanic kid, got in a knife fight. I was in fifth grade. I still have the scars to this day on my arm.
Mhm.
Uh, and they're my mother's idea on this was, well, let's call the police. So the LAPD shows up, puts you in the car, goes over to the parents' house. They talk it out. I mean, that was about it. I get some stitches, and we're done.
Exactly.
Um, and that was about it. It wasn't one of those things where you become friends afterwards. Um,
Mhm.
but you learned that discipline. So I will say, and the lesson learned in that period of time is kids are, they don't know anything. They learn what they learn from their parents.
Exactly.
Um, Having said that, um, the two things that you learn in that time is first off, embarrassment,
Mhm.
and the next thing is fear.
Exactly.
So uh, that's what you learn because what you don't know, you're fearful of.
Mhm.
Um, but the start of the work ethic, so to speak, my grandmother bought me an actual punching bag and would stand behind it for me to learn how to punch a punching bag. That was
Mhm.
a birthday gift. So then, of course, you had to pass that on, and I mean, so on and so forth. Um, so when we were there at that point in time, we ended up having to move. My grandmother now was going to move with us. My uncle was planning on moving out to Houston, Texas. Life was going to be better for them out there, and so uh, let's all move to Houston. But it wasn't going to be better for my mom work wise, so that was no go. But uh, the family household was they found a house in Lakewood, and my aunt, who was also an alcoholic, came along. And we were, my three brothers, my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt, Sharon. So you have to understand that, again, different times. So we moved to Lakewood in about 74. I'm now 11, 12. I'm basically six getting into my heading towards my teenage years. And again, you don't know anything. So we're out of all of the mix of, what was just bad with my dad and all of that. My grandmother, because he was Sicilian, would sit there and say, and of course, at that time, the Godfather movie came out. So, let's take dad and make sure that there's no reason for him to want to go, being me, to go hang out with him. So he's Sicilian. They're going to put a gun in your hand. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. I'm going to drive a Lincoln or a Cadillac. I mean, there's always, this kind of guy.
Stereotypical.
Oh,
Stereotypical.
yeah,
Categorizing, categorizing. Mhm.
absolutely. And again, my uncle was still around at that point in time. He hadn't moved. My grandfather was in and out. My mother or my grandmother and him were separated, never divorced, legally separated. So again, at family gatherings, and we kind of talked this before, but on that side of the family, and I don't know if this, again, part of the culture or where they came from or whatever, but every one of them was an Archie Bunker,
Yeah, we talked about that.
yeah, and my grandmother was, my grandfather definitely was, hilariously, and with their own family and their own kids,
Mm.
So again, and we talked about this in detail, but you go to a family gathering, whatever, a dinner, a barbecue, could be Thanksgiving, and then my grandfather be sitting there smoking his Winstons and having a bush, and talking to my Uncle Ron, my Aunt Elaine's husband, and what's going on. And my Uncle Ron was an extremely intelligent man. I mean, he helped design the shuttle seats. Um, and as soon as the man left, my grandfather would be just all over him. I mean, it was, you know,
Mm.
I mean, you hear that stupid, that meathead, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of like what you heard. So as a kid, again, you kind of get that this is normal nature. Um, and I hit junior high school. Like I said, we had moved to Lakewood and hit junior high in seventh grade, and that was a separate thing. It's called uh, uh, Hoover Junior High, and again, a whole different culture. Having said all of that, and again, we talked about it before, I distinctly remember that seventh to ninth grade. Remember having a girlfriend for a short period of time who was black. And never in a million years would that wouldn't have flew if they ever found out with all the Archie Bunkers in my household. But I didn't end it; her father did. But again, one of the things that you kind of look back on, and just to say, if I had heeded every single thing that I had heard, I would have not have dated a person of color. But obviously I didn't. And there was a certain point in time where kids start to take on their own identity. And as we talked about before, I was probably, I'm going to say, eighth or ninth grade. My brother was 2 years behind me. So he's in seventh, I'm in ninth. We're both going to the same school. And we start to realize that the people that were around my mother's family, these people are nuts. We don't, we don't get it. We don't understand. So the lesson learned prior leading up to high school is that don't discount your child, that there's a certain percentage of they learn a lot from what but there's also a certain identity, DNA, whatever, that says, what you're doing is not necessarily correct. It's wrong. um, I was also always a fearful kid, and uh, fearful of doing something wrong. I didn't mind being mischievous, but I always played by the rules, so to speak. um, and I always had a job. I started working at 12 for the Youth Employment Agency. We did some really hard stuff, me and my brother David. And we did labor work. We painted places, we cut grass, we dug ditches, whatever. This was all in the summer, make money. And so by the time I was 16, I had bought my first car. I had paid for my insurance for a year. I had two dirt bikes, i.e. Adam 12
Mhm,
series.
mhm.
Sold those to buy the car, and had my driver's license, paid for my school, driver's ed. And that was great, because now I had freedom, to me. And I got all of that on my very first 16th birthday. I'm born April 1, and you make all the jokes you want. I don't care. I've heard them all. I'm going to be 60 and I've heard them all.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
uh, the hilarious part of that is that I'm driving around in a Starsky and Hutch Gran Torino Sport, that my
Nice, nice.
oh yeah, my uncle, his soon-to-be wife, my Aunt Kathy, had it, and he kind of did some things to it, and they were going to get something else, and they sold it to me for $1,600.
Nice.
So, and I paid it, I mean, and had to have the insurance and all of that. Now, the funny part about that was to kind of show that independence. Remember, I'm 16. My
Right.
mother, who now is becoming, and I do want to say that between the ages of 1 to 18, my mother was sober exactly 4 years. Uh, so of that time. And uh, my mom said to me, well, you need to put my name on the car as well. And I said, why? She said, because I said so. And I said, I'm the one paying the bills. I'm the one buying it. It's
Exactly.
mine. So, no, and, needless to say, I won that argument. But again, you have to remember, I'm 16. So the question and lessons learned, what did you learn, from being born to the age of 16 to tell your mom, no, you know, um, I I work for this. I got this. This is mine, right? So
Exactly.
you had to have been bestowed all of that thing. That's one thing you did learn, plus a little DNA. And again, we go back to the thing that, that wasn't exactly the greatest thing in the world being in my household. Um, Again, moving forward, my mother, by the time I was 18, I want to say, tried to commit suicide twice. There was a lot of back issues
Mhm.
that were unknown at that time that she had in resentment towards my grandmother, who was there in the house every day. Um, and she felt as though that she was being hard done by because of the fact that none of her brother and her two sisters, her sister was an alcoholic and she wasn't much better. She was being put upon. Um, and so she kind of took it out on everyone else in the family. And she would I mean, it's something when you hear your mother crying and screaming to the top of her lungs to her kids, Lord, I wish I were dead.
Mm. Ooh, that's hard. That's very
So
hard.
consequently, again, now the sentiment that you had when you were 12, 13, and again, I say that this is just something that was in us, me and my brother David, said, okay, these folks ain't right,
Mhm.
Um, so she tried to commit suicide twice. Me and my brother David had caught it, so it never happened. And she got put into Long Beach Memorial,
Mhm.
and Long Beach Memorial for alcoholism. And that basically uh, was the start of her new life. While she was there, she met her to be second husband, Mike, which we thought was great because at that point, now she's got somebody else to focus on, and it wasn't us. Um, and when that happened and she got married and I was at her wedding, my grandmother refused to go. My grandmother was, a power trip kind of person. She really, that was her gig. She had always had the control. She was a controlling person. She was a co-alcoholic, so to speak. Um, you've got your problems and I won't hang them over your head, but I'm controlling the situation. Well, all that was gone now.
Mhm.
So consequently, she was packing up to go move out to Houston, take where my uncle was, take my uh, aunt Sharon with her. My mom was going to pack up and go to Modesto. They were selling the house, and me and my brother David were on our own. So that was quite a time and probably the worst of times. I had moved in with the girlfriend I had, which is a high school sweetheart. We were planning on getting married. Um, and David went up to Modesto because he had heard how great it was. He had now gotten married as well. He was 18, I want to say, 18 or 19, his high school sweetheart. And within 6 months, I want to say, he came back and he moved in with me and Beth. And he left his wife up there, and then they came back. But anyway, um, somewhere around the ages of 21, I want to say, I managed a bread company called Dixie Buns. Uh, I managed that, and then in that same warehouse was a place that did plumbing. And so the guy that was there, his name was Vernon Nell. He was probably in his 70s then. He had started this company, and he said, "Do you want to make a living, or do you want to do this garbage?" And I said, "Well, I want to make a living." He says, "I will teach you a living." Okay. So sure enough, I got put into the program and I learned plumbing. Um, and then, of course, my brother, he got out of Carl's Jr., where he was working, and then I taught him. And somewhere along that line, my brother Danny, who had became an emancipated adult at 17. Yeah, okay, so another thing here. My brother at 17 decided on his own, he filed for the court and went and became an emancipated adult.
On his own. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
he was determined. He was determined. It was gonna
Well,
happen.
it kind of runs in the family, a little, as you may
Mhm.
have, this says. And Danny was a wild one. But yeah, so consequently, the next thing we know, Danny's now down. So now it's the brothers three. And we're learning. So now David is working with me. And now David teaches my brother. Um, the lesson learned from the, you know, we'll say from that through 21 is you have to have a work ethic, and you realize, and especially in my family, if you're not working, you're not loved. So if you're not bringing in money, you're not loved. If, I was never a drinker. I mean, not that I couldn't have a drink, not that I've never been intoxicated before. That's not true. But the bottom line is that it wasn't my go-to. I wasn't a drug guy. I didn't smoke pot. I didn't, I go out, special, whatever the occasion was, you'd have some drinks, but I didn't drink every day. It wasn't part of the thing. I didn't have to have it. Smoked, of course, smoked cigarettes, but I didn't have to have the other. And my brother David, exactly the same. Very light. As a matter of fact, he's bowed out and stopped drinking. Never smoked cigarettes. Didn't, I think, somewhere around 25, just zero. Danny was another case. Danny was a good time Charlie. He was not that way. But you learned that work is everything. It may not, well, to a certain extent, work defines you. I think that I wanted to be a record engineer. I was in music. I played horns. I played, throughout my entire youth. I played trumpet. I was always into music. And that's why I wanted to be a recording engineer. I never thought I'd be good enough as a trumpet player. But at that time, again, that was hard, and you needed to make money and put a roof over your head. So plumbing was the avenue, and I, did really well at it. And David did really well at it. But now we're getting into let's get married. So this is a whole nother section. I'm going to be getting married to my high school sweetheart. And so down payment on a car, $3,600 ring, $1,200 dress. Now, bear in mind, I'm making probably $5,000 a month at that time, I want to say. So that's 60 grand, right? And so that which in 84, 85, that was, pretty good money. I was traveling back and forth between here and Houston, Texas. Surprisingly, Vern had opened up a place in Houston, and he gave it to his sister-in-law to run, and he wanted me to train them. So I did. So I was doing that, and then at the same time, Vern had given to my brother Danny, the youngest one, place up in Fresno, and also surprisingly in Modesto. And there was places for him to stay. When I go out to Houston, the same thing. But again, down deep inside, there was still a pain inside of me. Again, I didn't drink. I didn't do drugs, but I ate. You know, there's always some other facet. And when
Exactly.
you find yourself, you know, in that position, and again, from what we learned, if you wanted, we had no other way to make the kid happy, let's feed him.
Uh,
Right.
Gotcha.
So you again learn that, you know, from your parents, or at least, you know, the parents that raised you. It's life is about, if you want something, this is what you get back. Okay. So you want love, bring in money. You want to feel good, we'll make you a dinner. Well, you know, that type of give and take.
Yeah.
And we kind of probably saw it as, you know what, we'll go out and make our own.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
thanks for the
Well,
offer.
I'd like to interject here.
Sure.
Got like 8 minutes. So yeah, we
Sure.
got like 8 minutes. So I don't
That's
want
fine.
what happened to us
No,
before to happen to us again. So
I
bring us
got it.
on up. And your
I got a
idea,
time.
you got a timer as well. Okay, the idea, and you've been tying it in exactly the whole time when you're saying, what is the lesson from? So what you're doing is actually, you've done the video excellent. Every time you make an incident, you say, okay, what's the lesson learned? And I appreciate that. That's
All
why
right.
I want you coming on. So go ahead. You still got another.
So again, the relationship, the marriage didn't work. She ran off with my best friend.
Yeah.
She then married him 6 months later with the ring I bought her. I then stopped making the payments, so they took it away from her, which was the only thing I got out of it.
Wow.
But again, yeah, there was a lot of pain. And so I focused on myself. And me and my brothers, we were a wrecking crew. And again, I decided in 1986 that I didn't want to plumb anymore because my back wouldn't take it. And I saved up a bunch of money and went to work for a company called Smith Emery.
Mm-hmm.
And I made $8.50 an hour, which is a far cry from 60 grand a year.
Yes.
And did everything I could to be able to make that work.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, stayed in inspection. I ran labs. I ran inspection crews. You know, started in soils and worked my way up. And at every place, I got a little bit better, a little bit better, and a little bit better. And somebody thought that, you know, I had the ability to manage people. Some people would say not, but I knew what it took, that in that field, you sell widgets. You sell integrity. Laboratories only sell of any where they have inspectors, you're selling integrity. And I had that. So I knew how to sell that widget.
Exactly.
So I ballooned up to about 19, it was February 93. I ballooned up to a whole 405 pounds.
Mm.
And I was dating a girl, and she said, you know, I can't watch you go out this way. And so again, I sat in a room. Every time I got off work, I sat in a room and watched the TV with everything off. And then, for whatever reason, turned it on. And when I turned it on came Light Life, which was the very first stomach stapling thing.
Yes. Yes.
And went to my insurance the next day, asked about it. They said, "Oh, in your case, it's completely free."
Oh, nice.
So it was like a $5,000 surgery, and became basically one of the guinea pigs for the stomach stapling surgery that took place. I lost 205 pounds.
Great job.
And then, well, there was a lot of starvation,
Mhm.
but a lot of goods, a lot of bads. I mean, if I hadn't done that, I'd be dead.
Mm.
Now, here's the thing. The minute I made that choice in my life, doors started open. I'm not the big fat guy anymore. Again, you got to remember, this is now 94, 95. Now I'm skinny. I'm a decent looking guy, or at least I was so told. And now we move forward. And again, every selection, lesson learned, every selection you make, there is something that's going to be good or bad. Now, I'm fighting the bad from that decision made in 93 because of the fact I have stomach issues and so on and so forth that come from just that surgery, acid, and all that kind of stuff. But again, you made the decision, you stick with it. Um, every single point in your life, you change about every 10 years. And there's some decision. I'm waiting, I'm going to turn 60. I'm sure there's going to be something there as well. But right when I hit 40, 40 was a turning point. It was a lot of really, horrendous stuff from the standpoint of having to deal with my mom and her husband. And in 2005, I want to say, so I would have been, yeah, I was 40. She called me up and said her husband died on the couch. And she had burnt so many bridges with the rest of the family, no one was going to help. So I did everything in my power to help her as much as possible. But what you realize is that she had gotten rid of alcohol, but she started taking prescription drugs. So you're just replace one with the other, right? And she wanted what she wanted. She felt as though that's what she deserved. And again, when everyone ran away, I did not. And tried to do his best. There's still times today that I wish I had done better, but it is what it is. She passed away in 2013. And again, I'm glad I did what I did, but there was a point in time where I literally despised that woman. Okay. And the brothers were like, "You're on your own." And so when that happened, it was amazing because my life turned around immediately. Every single dollar I had was basically in some kind of support bilaterally to her. If they needed something, let's go ask Johnny.
Yeah.
You know what
The
I mean?
the go-to guy. The go-to guy.
So, had relationships, never married, but the bottom line is I know why. Number one, I wouldn't have stayed married having that kind of family and that kind of interaction. It would have, not been good. So moving forward, now here comes my brother, who's now he had joined outlaw motorcycle gang or group, I should say, and he had an unbelievable company. He had he had a plumbing company. My brother David had a plumbing company. They went out on their own.
John, we're on our last minute, so
okay.
Can you wind it up? Say your last thoughts in regards to. It looks like. Yeah, go ahead.
My thoughts is that the person that you are when you work is the person that it shouldn't define you, but it does. And find what you love and do that. But don't let anyone tell you you can't. It's somewhere down deep inside of you, no matter what you see on the outside. I don't care what it is. You know better, always. You know right from wrong. You know what's evil and what's not evil. Do what's not evil. Do what is correct, that you can get up every day and look in the mirror. It's going to be a hard road. Life is not easy, but I guarantee you,